All right, thank you everyone for coming on this session. Today we are going to be talking about test management and the last chapter. Anyway, we've gone through 4 chapters in this particular book, right? We've done the fundamental of testing, the life cycle, the static testing, and I said that this part for test analyst is very, very important. That is number 4, chapter 4, which is test design, which we took some time to review. Now we are going to talk about the test management, and then we look into the tool that you can use for testing, right? So, but okay, now the first thing I want to say, right, for test management, as the name implies, is for test lead and test manager. If you are a test analyst, you might not have anything to do with this level unless your test lead said, okay, yeah, can you do that? But having said that, having knowledge of this is important because you never know when this will be asked at interviews anyway. But yeah, but it's not something that a normal tester would do anyway. So so let's go through that quickly. So one, people will be talking about risk-based testing. What is risk and testing? Yeah. So of course, it is not possible to talk about test management without looking into risk part anyway, because if you look at the fact that in chapter 2, I mentioned this anyway. So if you are testing a big application, and you only have a few minutes to test it, right? And they gave it to you. Like for instance, now you are at work and you've tested this application for over a month, right? And they now say, yeah, Deji, we're about to release this application. Can you quickly test it for us, right? Now you don't have a month. Maybe you only have maybe 2 or 3 hours. What are the things that you need to look into? So you need to look into the risk part. And that is one part of testing, which is risk-based. So as a test manager, you want to define the risk, right? So as you can see from this from this formula, right, the level of risk is the probability of risk occurring and the impact if it did happen, right? And you can also see the definition of risk as a factor that could result in a future negative consequences, right? Most important when it has an impact or likelihood. Likelihood is just the probability of it occurring. So if you say there's a chance of something appearing or a defect being seen, right? What is the chance, right? And if eventually that particular defect occurs in production, what's the impact, right? For instance, a good example is like, let's say we have an application, right, that allows you to log in, right? One is like we know that at least 70% of people that go to the site will use the login functionality. So that means that the probability of issues here in that particular application uh, resulting from a log from the login functionality is very, very high, right? So, and the impact also is high anyway. So impact would mean that, yeah, it means that it can affect 70% of the people, right? So, and now the impact is what I said now, probability of a risk appearing. So how do you measure this probability is, for instance, now, if you've been testing, and every time you test, you have issues with that functionality, that means the probability is high. But if you have tested this functionality like 10 times and you don't find any, right, you can technically say, okay, probability is low that you find, but do you get it now? And we spoke last week about pesticide paradox. Do you get it now? The fact that if you continue doing the same thing or using the same test, you are going to get the same result anyway. So it also leads to that particular part. So now, in essence, when you talk about risk, we also talk about the project risk as well. So which is there are some risks that are not related to the product itself, but they are related to different parts. For instance, supplier issues, right? a supplier can fail in their responsibility. It could also mean that maybe a third-party APIs, right, is not working properly, but you guys didn't test it anyway because you don't have the facility. So you need to also raise that as a risk. And also it could be organization factor, right? The law some of my guys in the advance will be complaining, I'm at work, it's only me, and the work is too much, and everything. That is a risk in itself because they have staff shortage. Also, it could mean that they've hired the wrong developer or keyway that doesn't know what they need to do, and even political issue. This political issue might not be general political issue like government issue. It can also be politics within the work itself anyway. So that will stop you from communicating your need and result as well. And also personal issues also could mean that, yeah, you have different issues, health-wise, blah, blah, yeah, that could prevent you from being able to do things properly as well. So then failure by team to follow on information found in testing, that's another thing. Then attitude towards expert. This is a big thing anyway, because some people could have this attitude and they are not serious about quality or testing. They thought, well, it's testing, we'll do it later anyway. Because of that, it will impact. And it could also be technical issues, problem that's found even in the environment or in the late in data or in the code itself anyway. So that could be issues. So you need to identify these issues, right? And then yeah, but to be honest, even this is academic, right? It's not something that you do even at work, trying to say it's 1 times 3, the risk is 3. So you just itemize the risk and that's it anyway. So then the product risks, we are always familiar with this because in more often, even if the test lead is not doing this part, the project manager or the scrum master can look into that aspect anyway. So that responsibility doesn't fall only on the test manager or test lead only, but this could fall mainly on the test lead anyway, because one, the quality of the software will be affected by that. Yeah, you have issues that could cause the company some losses anyway. So, and also there also could be poor software characteristics. As you know, as a tester, you need to test the functionality of the application and also non-functionality in terms of security, reliability, usability, and performance anyway. So this will fall in the remit of the keyway. And poor data and quality integrity is another thing that you might also need to look into. So before testing starts, it's recommended that you need to do risk assessment to see, oh, okay, what are the things that you need to focus on? Okay, what will prevent this particular product from going to launch, even before you start anything at all, anyway. So that is that part. Then test organization. So now we need to talk about how we can organize testing. We've actually spoken about this before, right? So in this set that we talk about different level of testing. So we can see now we have different level of independent testing. You have developer performing their own testing. You can see the independent is low. Then you have independent tester that is added to the development team as well. So, and you have then independent permanent tester as well. So you just have this diagram explaining different level of independent testing that could happen, to be honest. So, and I think there's not much to talk about in this one. So, and the tasks of a test leader and a tester. So we need to, yeah, I think this could be important because some people don't even know their responsibility as a tester and their responsibility as a test lead. So quickly, I think, hold on 1 minute. So I just want to start from the bottom first. Okay, I want to start from this one first anyway. Responsibility of a tester. So yeah. So and these are the things that of course you want to put in your CV anyway. As a tester, you should be able to review, contribute towards the development of the test plan. So as you can say, review, contribute. It's not that you are creating it, right? But of course, in some roles, yeah, if you are the only tester, you have to do it. So if you look up here, when it comes to the test plan, you will be like, okay. So it's the responsibility of the, I'll come back anyway. Let me leave that for now. So it's the responsibility of the test lead to ensure that this is done. So also as a tester, you need to analyze, review, and assess user requirement, which you guys have been doing anyway. Take the acceptance criteria or requirement specification, right? And then review and you assess it, right? Then from there, you create your test specification from the test basis, right? So you set up test environment, right? And then you prepare your test data, right? And of course, you might also need to kind of create test data or you acquire it if you need be. So, but in essence, you need to create a test data. So then after that, you implement the test at all levels, executing, logging the test results, and also documenting differences between the test and the expected results based on the application. So then after that, also you also involved in the test administration, right? So technically, right, you might have a test management tool that you use or monitoring tool that you use. So you need to kind of ensure that things are put into the right place and everything. So in our own case, we use Azure DevOps, right? You need to ensure that that is used appropriately anyway. So then automation testing, right? So of course, you know that you need to kind of you need to know that you need to create it and also manage it as well. And it's good that you can see what they write here. So maybe support by developer. So technically, don't be afraid. So yeah, even if it's, oh yeah, I'm new or I'm having issues, you can also seek the help of a developer. I'm trying to create this. Can you, yeah, you guys are developers. Can you please enlighten me? This is what I need to do, but I don't know how to do it anyway. But in this era of ChatGPT, I think you'll be fine anyway. So, and yeah, you will run your tests, yeah, provide the results, review the test with other testers anyway. So that is the role of a tester, to be honest. And this is even like ISTQB certified roles anyway. So as you can see, it is everything that is listed there is what you guys have done, right? And you've kind of created a test plan, you've assess your requirements, you've created test specification, you've got a test environment that you have, and you can see that they say often coordinating with system administration and sometimes so this test environment will be procured for you by the DevOps, then you would then start to work on it anyway. So then, of course, you've created your test data. You've also implemented the test level. As you can see, we've actually covered all these things. So yeah. So now going to the test leading part, right? So as a test lead, you need to, or test lead or test manager, but more often test lead anyway, you create the test strategy and test plan. Yeah. As you can see, coordinating the development of that with project managers. So as you can see, so but to be honest, in this era, project managers are not even involved that much. They would just ask a test lead to do it and send it to them. So then you would then write, yeah, the test strategy for the project, right? And the test policy as well. Anyway, so and okay. So you would then also contribute to the testing perspective. Yeah, this is basically in the meeting. This is just talking anyway. So then after that, you would then, yeah, ensure that the testing are covered at all levels of the test levels and the cycles as well. So you would then, yeah, ensure that specifications are monitored. You have test execution in place and yeah, it's basically just all the boring stuff of management of the artifact that's been produced and the test report as well. And then also configuration of the testware or artifact that is in place. Then also you put metrics in place. How do you measure test progress? How do you measure the quality of the product that is being delivered? It could be number of bugs that's left or number of code that you see. So you just measure that anyway. So, and should we automate? Should we not automate? Which part do we automate? That's another thing as well. So how do we support testing with tools? Which tool do you use? You need to also agree on that one. Then also the test environment is another thing that you might need to agree on. Which test environment or which even environment should be used for testing, actually, right? So, and in normal situation, you will have a dev environment, you have a QA environment, and you might also have like a pre-prod environment, and then you have a a production environment. So production is only in a few places that you test on production, right? And in most cases, production is locked down. If you have to test production in production environment, you need to open your eyes very, very wide. Do you get it now? And ensure that you are not deleting what you shouldn't delete, okay? And you are not adding what you shouldn't be adding. So, but of course, some people allow production environment for quick sanity or smoke testing. Anyway, so at the end of the project, you will write this test summary, which yeah, I will love you to do if you can anyway. So, okay. So that is that with the test lead and also tester. So now going to test approaches or test strategy, right? So now we're going to talk about test approach anyway. Test approach is the implementation of the test strategy on a particular project. Please bear that in mind. Test strategy is for the whole organization in essence. But then you can take your test strategy and you can implement it on a particular project. Then that becomes a test approach, right? So, and you said test approach defines how testing will be implemented. But it's, yeah, so he said, test approach can reflect testing for a whole organization, a program, or an individual project anyway. But technically, you write your test strategy for the whole organization. Having said that, in this era, some companies work in silos, right? So you have a department, even though it's a big organization, you have a department having their own functional testing team, right? They don't interfere with other people. With that approach, they will have independent test strategy, right? The whole organization might not have a test strategy, right? So, yeah, like overarching test strategy will not exist, but individual team will have their own test strategy. So, okay, I'm going to skip this. These are just boring stuff anyway. So, okay, deciding on the approach that you need to use, yeah, will based on different things. Or also, yeah, risks of the failure of the project, skills and experience of people, objective of the testing, regulations, and also the nature of the project. So, and of course, you would look into the fact that if an application is risk intensive, right? You will need to, yeah, look into that approach rather than when it's just like a normal application. So now test planning, okay? So now for a test, uh, for a test analyst, right, or a professional tester, right, this bit is one that separates you from a normal tester or an ad hoc tester or someone that didn't do any testing. Because like we said in the beginning, everyone can do testing, right? But not everyone will be planning their testing. Do you get it now? And which I agree with this statement. It said test planning is the most important activity undertaken by a test lead in any test project. So if you don't plan, like they say, you plan to fail, right? So that is very, very important for you to have a test plan, right? So let's see the content of a test plan. We'll skip this one for now. We see. So according to this particular document, 𝐖𝐈𝐓𝐇, that is Institute of Engineering, Electrical Engineering. I don't know what that is anyway, so I've forgotten. So, but this document is a very old document, but they still use it anyway. So what do you put in your test plan, right? So this is the section. For instance, test plan will have a unique reference, right? So you have introduction, which actually like a brief introduction of what the document is about. You have the test item. So basically, that is object of testing, right? So, and then you have the features that you want to test, yeah? The features, basically item that you are testing, right? Let's say login, registration, payment, adding mentor, removing mentor, all those are features, right? So now features not to be tested. You can say, okay, what are the features that we are not testing? We are not testing email functionalities, right? Or content of an email. This is out of scope. We are not testing that the fact that you can link the application with social media and you can post onto social media, it's out of scope. So yeah, every features that is not tested or out of scope. The approach, as like we discussed before, yeah. So then what is the pass or fail criteria? So how do you determine if this particular application fail testing or not? So suspension and resumption requirement. So when you want to say, oh, we want to suspend testing, it could be that example is like, I think one of you guys actually suspend some of the testing when the server was down, right? So with that approach, when server is down, there's nothing to do, you suspend your testing. So then, of course, the condition for resuming would be that when the server is on, right? Then test deliverables, basically what are the artifacts that you need to deliver at the end of the project, right? Your test plan, your test specification, design, test case, and test procedure, and the summary of the report. So testing tasks, which is basically all the tasks that you need to do, right? Whether for planning, execution, and also even dependencies as well, right? So environment that you use, you need to specify the responsibility. Who are the people within the project? Yeah, so you might need to, yeah, your test lead, your test manager, automation, UAT, blah, you need to put those in there as well. So is there any training that's needed? Right, you need to specify. For example, yeah, we need to do testing automation training using Selenium, blah, blah, something like that. So and also, what are the key milestone and delivery dates? You need to add that contingency as well. Then at the end, you then have a part for approval where you have the date and even versions as well. You have the version, the date, and then signature, right? So that is that. This is the conventional one. This is the traditional test plan, to be honest. Most people don't use this one nowadays because if you go to Azure, right, you see Azure DevOps has got test plan, right? So which kind of made this one a bit uh, redundant anyway. So all right, so this is an acronym that you can even help you for interviews if they're talking about test plans. What are the things that you should put in there so that it will help you to kind of remember? Because at the interviews, they can ask you what are the components of a test plan? Space, depth, actually, space, scope, people, approach, criteria, environment, deliverables, identifiers, which is the beginning, risks, and then testing tasks. I think that would even help you. So what are the tasks that you need to do during test planning? So, and of course, this is basically the test lead or test manager working with the test with the project managers, identifying the scope and the risks to be tested. So they put together a test approach document. Then They also kind of identify the test activities that they need to do, right? And working with the project manager as well. So they need to decide what to test, the roles and everything. So it's technically, if you look at there, right, to all these things, you need to kind of itemize them, right? And that is what is being kind of explained further here anyway. So entry criteria. Entry criteria is technically what criteria you need to establish before you start testing at the beginning of the testing. What are the things that you need to put in place before you can say testing should be done? An example is that, of course, you need to have an environment available. You cannot start testing if you don't have an environment. If you need some tools, they need to be installed. The code also should be available and testable, and test data that you need to use also is available and correct, and test design activities as completed. That means you've kind of designed your test and it's ready for you to run. So exit criteria, when can testing stop? When do you think you can say, yeah, I finished testing? Like we learned before, I think in chapter 3 or 2, we cannot say, oh, yeah, I think this is the word that they put, is actually exhaustive testing is not possible. So when we say you cannot test an application exhaustively, what does it mean? Does it mean that we won't even start testing? It just means that at a point you need to make a decision not to continue. So for you to do that, what are the things that you need to look for? Right. So that is your exit criteria. So those things that your application should meet or your testing should meet, and you can say stop. Right. So for instance, all your test plans has been run. Right. Also, you've got a certain level of requirement that is covered. Right. So there's no high priority defect left. Right. So high risk area has been fully tested. As you can see, they didn't say that everything has to be tested anyway. So, and also, yeah, this is very, very important. Even if you have all this one done, right? When you don't have money, that is the end anyway. So when the budget has finished, so there's nothing. Yeah. When you've also achieved the schedule, right? Release date is already reached. There's nothing to do. The project has to go live. They made the call, and that's it anyway. So yeah, and yeah, exit criteria should be agreed as early as possible. You need to, before the project starts, they would do that. Then test estimation. This is now being overtaken by agile agile estimation anyway. But in waterfall, this is still used, but it's something that you need to know. So if you are testing an application, right, and they ask you for your estimate, what are the things that you need to use? So what are the criteria or the metrics that you need to use? Okay, this is going to take me 2 days or 3 days. What are the metrics that you use? One thing is, yeah, so you can use a metric base, right, by looking at the number of test conditions that you've written, right, and say, oh, I've written 10 test conditions, right? So one of them would take me half a day, and I've got 10. So that's 5 a day. So also it could mean number of test cases that you've written, right? So, and that's another thing as well. Also could also mean you can also use the test cases that you've executed as well. I've done 5 yesterday, and those 5 took me a whole day. So that means for the next 5, it's going to be a whole day as well. So you can use it to estimate anyway. So the time that it took you to develop the test cases, for instance, if you know, it took me 5 days to do these test cases, that means it might take me half of those time or equal time or more than time, because as you are designing the test cases, you will know if that test cases is difficult to execute or not. So, and also the time that it take to run the test cases, you can use that as well to say, okay, I run some test cases before and it took me this time anyway. So, and yeah, you consider the environment outages that you have. So another one is expert-based approach anyway to estimation. Yeah. So basically looking at someone like a business expert can look and say, hey, you should take this approach, you should take this amount. They just look at it based on their experience anyway. That the person can also be a business expert or test process consultant or developer, or even it could be test architect or even someone with more experience anyway. So, okay, I'm going to skip this for a start and yeah. So then test progress monitoring and control. How do you monitor your test progress? So, and since you've already developed your test plan, so then you have it already. So you just need to kind of walk through your test plan and focusing on your 𝐂𝐍𝐄𝐓 criteria and then measuring your test coverage, right? So to measure the progress, there are some metrics that you can use. Yeah, percentage of work done, right, in test preparation, right, or percentage of work done in test. Yeah. So what this means is like, for instance, when you're preparing the test cases, you can say, oh, I've covered 50% of the the test case that I need to write, right? Or I've done 10%, right, of the test environment that I need to create, or I have executed 70% of the test cases, right? So that is another metric anyway, so that you can use the same thing. You can also use the coverage of requirements, the defects, and also even milestone as well. Anyway, so I think that should be, yeah, the reporting, I think that, yeah. So you need to report on what you found anyway. So there is a test report outline. For me, I think this is also outdated because in Azure DevOps, it's got the test report as well anyway. So, but as a test manager that are traditional, they can still produce this one anyway at the end of the project. Yeah. So, okay, incident management. So there might be some issues within. So, like for instance, server is down, environment is down. You want the stakeholder to know about this. Even so, test manager sometimes could even write, oh, the server was down for 3 days. Because of that, we lost 3 days. Right. So then they know that, yeah, the pressure is not on you to deliver because that's just the purpose anyway. So as you can see, the details of this incident are date of the issues, then severity of the issue, references, actual results, and date that it was recovered. Yeah. And as well as date it was even discovered, or yeah, in part of the severity, all those things, you just put it in there. So this is an example anyway. So configuration, this is when you are actually setting an environment. So I think that basically summed that up for the test management anyway. Like I said, it's just a boring thing that the test managers do anyway. Uh, can we stop recording before we move to the next part, if that's okay? Okay, I think so. Okay, we'll continue then, if that's fine, I think. So, okay, tool support for testing, right? What are the tools that we need to use for testing? This is basically, a few ones anyway. So, of course, we know the tools that you need to use for testing. I don't need to talk more on this one anyway. So, depending on whether I'm manual testing or yeah. So to be honest, this is not really a big issue anyway. So um yeah, this is basically a system architectural diagram of an hotel anyway. So type of tools that we know that, yeah, you can categorize testing tools based on their purpose, activities, type of testing that they support anyway. So let's look test management tool. For instance, we know that that is there for you to manage the test life cycle, right? Because that's the purpose of that. A good example is the ALM. Also, you have quality center and the likes like that anyway. So that you can use as an ALM, yeah, which is application lifecycle. Incident management tool, which is for defect management anyway. So ALM, the Azure DevOps also falls into this one as well anyway. So, and you can see the status of life cycle of a defect. You have new, open, fixed, reopen, and closed. Yeah, then requirement management tool as well. So configuration management tool. Yeah. So that is that. Yeah. So okay, I think so. Tools for static testing. So, and like I think we started this in lesson chapter 2 or 1, right? So where we spoke about static testing, yes, chapter 3 anyway. So if you want to use a tool, right, there's some tools for traceability as well, right? So for that purpose, yeah, that they are majorly used by developers anyway. So as you can see, modeling also used by designers anyway, so which is now for testing. Test design tools, yeah, so which you could use. Yeah, Azure DevOps also fall into this bit as well. So yeah, so test data preparation tools, right? So that could be another thing. So test comparators anyway. So you can use this for automation anyway. I've done a brief of this before. When you compare different files, you can even write a code for that as well anyway. So there's execution too. To be honest, all these are very, very academic, right? Even at work, you might not even need to kind of go into this detail. But if you were to pass your foundation ISTQB test, so you might need to kind of understand this, right? So I think, to be honest, that should be all. There's no much in this area. So monitoring to which, to be honest, I don't, unless you are actually a cybersecurity professional, so you would be using the monitoring to data quality assessment. Yeah, so usability. Yeah, so of course, what you just need to know is there are a lot of tools, right? But which one are particular to you, right? You just need to focus on those areas. So even though, as you can see now, when you are mentioning the tools on your project, right? Spreadsheet is one, Word, email, backup, SQL, project planning, and even other debugging tools anyway. So I think that concludes everything, to be honest. The rest are, yeah. So any question? I think that's all. If the admin is there, so let's stop the recording. I think, yeah. Okay. These are the questions for the, yeah. Okay. Any question?